GORN is a ludicrously violent VR gladiator simulator made by Free Lives, the developers of Broforce and Genital Jousting, in 2017. And with a rating of 4.8 out of 5 on the Oculus platform and 93% on Humble Bundle, as well as supporting both Windows and PlayStation platforms with the Oculus VR platform in the works, it is safe to say that this VR brawler is up there with other well-known VR games such as Valve Corporation's Half-Life Alyx and Superhot Team's Superhot. Yes, the company who made Superhot's name is Superhot Team. How and why does this simple gladiator murdering game match with the standards of these other VR games that, arguably, have more to them in terms of story, plot, graphics and gameplay? Well, this could be accredited to the technical and stylistic elements of the game.
Water, earth, fire, air.
No, not those elements. According to Arseth and Kalija, these four elements of any given game are the sign, the mechanical system, the material medium, and the player. Interpreting this information in the context of GORN, this would refer to the use of physical objects instead of a user interface, or these flaccid weapons. The mechanical system is described as the process or system of a game in which informational conditions are changed and presented to the player, who is then affected by the change in information. In GORN, the player is given various weapons that change the way in which the player fights. For example, the first weapon the player is given are these. But honestly, these seem like they'll do more damage. Fuck you. This causes the player to bash and smash enemies, or rip them limb from limb. But once the player is given a proper weapon, the gameplay changes, and now rather than smashing, bashing and ripping gladiators apart, the player slices and dices them. Or still smash and bash them, I guess. Arseth and Kalaja defines the material medium of a game as the devices or objects used to play it. They mention that playing a real-time strategy game or a first-person shooter using a PlayStation controller makes for a very different game than playing the same title on a PC using a mouse. Of course, GORN is made for VR. Porting this game to desktop as a mouse and keyboard game would leave the game drier than my humor. Allowing the player to swing their arms around in real space is the entire premise of the game. It allows the player to feel like they are the gladiator and that they are the ones murdering hundreds of big-boned, big-foreheaded dudes, at the hilarious risk of murdering their friends or TVs accidentally.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Knock him out, knock him out. Knock him out.
Damn.
This shit real life.
Dude, you ain't for real. Stop. You ain't for real. Stop, dude.
Real life.
He sleep.
Who?
Flex.
He better be playing on my life.
Flex.
Damn.
Games are an individual or a group's perspective on the perception of a cybermedia object, meaning that the game played is experienced differently by each player's perspective on the game. Some people prefer to play GORN's built-in custom game modes, where the player has full control on how the game is played, ranging from giving the player infinite health to tampering with the size of gladiators' heads. Hey, bubble. Others prefer to play the game's campaign, where each round has a set of rules to which the player must abide to win the round. On top of these elements of game design, GORN vaguely abides to Bordwell and Thompson's 4 elements of meaning.
Water,
No, still not those elements. These elements of meaning are referential, explicit, implicit, and symptomatic meanings. Although these 4 elements are more applicable to films rather than games, GORN does show signs of these elements. First of all, the referential meaning is quite straightforward. The entire game references gladiator battles in ancient Rome. The explicit meaning is
Rip and tear until it is done.
the implicit meaning is violence and the severity thereof. Quite simple, really. The symptomatic meaning is with reference to the giant bobbleheads that stare at you mercilessly mutilating shirtless men, how violence takes place in everyday life, but the media only observes and reports on it, rather than doing anything about it. While we're at it, screw this guy. This man is the epitome of hegemony. To start playing, you must do as he says and lift your fist up in the air and fight for his amusement. If you don't know, hegemony is defined by Google as leadership or dominance, especially by one state or social group over others. And, that's a good example, I guess. The king gives you your weapons and sends enemies your way, trying to kill you in a magnificent manner. Now, let's move back to the question. How and why does this simple gladiator murdering game match with the standards of these other VR games that arguably have more to them in terms of story, plot, graphics, and gameplay? Well, it abides to both film and game elements, something that's quite rare to find in games. And this is why GORN matches other highly rated VR games in quality.